school for some of you down here, but it's fun. So with that, we will get started. Come on up.
Woo!
Good morning. Behind me is a photo of the monument to the African Renaissance, commissioned by the Senegalese president, designed by a Hungarian, built by the North Koreans. For us, this is a metaphor of the ICTD field, and we explore why, if this is a problem, and why it's a problem. Thanks.
Okay, so a little while ago, Kantara wrote a paper where he wondered whether poverty was going to be linked to ICT reduction or not. This came at a really good time for a bunch of us working in East Africa because we did some analysis to find out whether Kantara was right or wrong. After some regression, some statistics, a whole bunch of analysis, we were able to conclude that he's completely and utterly.
Okay, so I think most people here know about the explosive growth of mobile phones in developing countries, but maybe know a little bit less about disparities in access to phones. So using these data sets, I'll talk about disparities in access between men and women and between rich and poor and whatnot.
Congratulations! You've just gotten a new job. You'll be expected to dive right into your work with no training. You'll get some text reference materials, even though you can't read, and you'll only be paid if you do your job well. Welcome to the life of a community health worker. Come find out how. In here.
What do information kiosks set out to do? Well, they try to provide information in a domain of activities, and they try to reduce information asymmetry. But wait, is that really what they try to do? If you want to find out what else information kiosks can do come to my session at 2 p.m. today.
In this paper, we compare internet use in 2 different regions. The United States is supposed to be going. It's not going.
I may not have got your slides.
Okay, in this paper, we compare internet use in 2 different regions, the United States and Central Asia, to explore the contextual variance of the social meaning of the internet. The slides make this so much better. In the U.S., we used Pew Internet data from 2002 and 2007, and we used our own data from Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan from a survey conducted in 2008. We segmented users based on Rogers' DOI framework and compared what user groups did and how they felt about the internet, and we found that users differed in surprising and unexpected ways.
Hi, I'm Tim Unwin, and for my sins I'm chairing ICTD2010.
So you intended this conference to be different from previous ICT4D conferences. How did you intend that? How different? In what terms?
Actually,
I haven't told you anything about my own research.
okay, yeah, I wanted to ask a question on you. You have a media and communication background doing agricultural projects, and how does that go together? What is your, and what changed
Yes.
our last year?
Yes.
All right.
First of all, thank you very much, Sir Tim, for allowing us to interview you at this conference, ICTD2010. The first question I'd like to ask is about the field of information and communication technologies for development in general. Judging from your long experience with technology, what do you think of this field? What significance does it have right now?
Well, I think it's very important. We've just started the World Wide Web Foundation relatively recently, these timescales, because when you look at the various organizations which we already had, like the Web Science Trust, which was doing the research, and the World Wide Web Consortium, which was doing standards, they're all trying to make sure that the web serves humanity. But in fact, that goal needs a whole lot more, particularly when you realize that only 75 to 80% of the world are actually using the web. 75% to 80% of the world aren't using the web at all. So making the web bigger and shinier isn't going to help very much. So I think but obviously ICT for development itself is a very large field, yeah. And there's lots of pieces, and even when you, I think the web level of actually becoming, for people being part of the information society is a very important one, but that also is very large.
Thank you. What trends do you see in this particular area? There was the mobile phone hype just recently. Very many people were talking about mobile phones being the new tool. On the other hand, on this conference, we heard voices already that basic infrastructure is missing, and this mobile phone hype is just not so significant as it seems. What do you think affects trends in the future?
I can't predict trends in the future, and even now, I think we have to be careful about being. You have to be careful about seizing on one particular part of this huge puzzle. So ICT is huge and big and complicated, changing. The world is huge and big and changing. So the idea that one particular idea is going to, or one particular project is going to suddenly replicate and solve, I think, of course, is crazy, because even when people compare different countries, but within a country, each country, in fact, is ridiculously different situations. So, that said, yes, I think I think realizing that the mobile web is going to be important has been something that the World Web Consortium has been pushing for several years now. The Web Foundation has been, I think, still feels that getting the web to work on mobile phones is important. So, for example, they've been teaching entrepreneurs how to build a website, which people will be able to get at with mobile phones. But at the same time, probably you have to have ways of using it with SMS. Yeah. And the person building the website, of course, they're not going to be building it using a mobile phone. They're going to be building it using a laptop. But then with a laptop and a mobile phone, you can make an SMS-based service, which is, if you know how to, and if you realize that it's possible. So that these different technologies, I think, are going to be, and the different sorts of devices are just going to appeal and be important to different sorts of people, different stages in different countries. Obviously, what's important, looking at it from the web point of view, is that everybody uses open standards. Mm-hmm. It's no good if you have to use different technology for getting to the people who've got phones than you do for getting to the people with laptops. So building web applications instead of native applications for phone, I think, is very important. So a big trend at the moment on the web is HTML5, the HTML5 platform, the open web application platform. And that has got a huge amount of opportunity because when you build those web applications, they work on across a range of devices.
You just mentioned open standards. There's open standards, open access, open source, open data. What's the importance of these trends now to ICT4D and technology?
Well, to start with, you should be very careful about sort of saying, well, no, open source and open data and open access and open standards. They're completely different things. Open is a word that comes in all of them. Yeah. But for example, open source is great because, for example, governments who can't afford a lot of money can get software which they don't have to pay money for and which they can fix if it goes wrong. That's open source. But be careful. Yeah. There's some open source which doesn't use the open standards. Yeah. Okay. So the open standards mean that that you can interoperate with other people. So that, of course, I've been pushing open standards for ages. One of the things I've been pushing open standards for is for data. Yeah. It's important, for example, for government data, but also it's important for data about ICT for development. Mm-hmm. So all of the people at this conference, all of the people are providing data. It would be very nice if it were linked data. And that's, if I go to their paper and I can't access the data, it shouldn't be because it's not interoperable. Mm-hmm. So data interoperability is important. So that's one part of open data. Then you talk about open access. Now that's the question as to what should be actually available. That's another interesting thing. And I think people, there's a strong push at the moment realizing that developing countries would do well to be very transparent. The more transparent they are, the less corruption they'll have, the more people will trust them, the more investment will come. And that will help them in their growth. So one part of transparency is being open with data. There's also a feeling that openness, so that's open access to data about the state of the world, I think is very important as well. But let's not connect that with open, and when you have open access, it's great if the data you get to is open standards. And if you happen to use open source software to read it, well, that's good too, but it's just, that's, in a way, they're separate things. It's important that people should be aware of each of those things, even though they all start with open.
Just build up on each other, potentially.
They do. They go very well together, of course, if you're using open source software to look at open data, which is an open, uses an open standard.
Thank you. One last question. Does the use of information and communication technologies for development, was it something you had in mind or relates to your initial idea of opening or inventing or, so to say, providing the internet to everybody without patent fees, without royalty fees? Was it something you had, this usage, did you have it in mind somewhere?
Well, I called it the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was supposed to have no boundaries when it comes to people. It was supposed to be a universal system, and all the talks I've ever given about it stress its universality. So it's got to be available to anybody, independent of culture, independent of... Now, and in that list, there was culture, there was, no matter what computer you use, no matter what language you use, no matter what sort of network connection you get. But we didn't say no matter whether you're poor or rich or poor, because initially, initially people didn't have the internet really in their homes. Initially, the internet was between people in universities had internet access. So the web only spread across the university networks. And then when it had spread, people saw it and wanted access to that at home, and that very much pushed the internet into homes. So it's only recently now that we've gone to the stage that 20% of the people in the world are using the web. That, compared to 100%, it's a rather small number. But by any other measure, it's a huge number.
Yeah.
So that, until this point, really, it wasn't big enough for us to think of it being as becoming a right. And now we've got the people in Finland are saying actually access to the web is a human right.
Yeah. Okay, so Tim, that was it. Thank you very much for your answers. I hope you enjoy this conference and I wish you all the best.
It looks like a really interesting conference. I'm having a great time already.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.